Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone. My name's Peter Richardson, and I'm the publishing editor of Business Time in Essex magazine. And what you can see behind me is the huge empire of Business Time in Essex, not exactly News Quest, but the subject of my little showcase presentation this afternoon is quality magazines never lose their gloss. Now, I've been in the print publishing world all my career, which is over 40 years now, starting as a trainee reporter on the East Anglian Daily Times, and then becoming eventually group editor of a 22 series group of newspapers. And then at the age of 30, seemed a good enough age then, I set off on my own as a PR media consultant. And eventually into magazine publishing. So the PR media part of the life was certainly an interesting one, because it took me onto a completely new world. I spent a lot of time working in the NHS, trying to publicise all the good things they did, and occasionally trying to deflect some of the nasty stuff which the media got interested in. So I could bore you with tales of my journalistic PR career for a long time, but we've only got 15 minutes. So what I want to do is concentrate on just the past 5 years. So it was 2016 when, disillusioned at the increasing obsession with social digital media and feeling more and more like an old world media dinosaur, I took the seemingly rather strange decision to launch what I'd call an old-fashioned glossy B&B magazine for Essex. At the time, there were a couple of magazines playing at it, I would say kindly, but not doing a particularly impressive job in most people's eyes. I admit to having grave reservations as to whether or not there was a demand for something which many of people assured me was yesterday's technology, print media. Everyone and everything is going online, they said. You're mad. Well, maybe, but as stubborn as ever, I ignored their advice and started touting the idea by phoning up basically businesses and explaining what my plan was. And then a very strange thing happened. Conversation after conversation went along similar lines, which was, I said who I was and explained that I wanted to launch a B2B magazine for Essex. And the number of people who stopped me after about 15 seconds, and they said, sorry, can I just stop you there? Is this another one of these online Mackie jobs? And I said, well, no, actually it's not. It's going to be an old-fashioned print magazine. And there was almost an audible sigh of relief before they said, thankfully from my point of view, oh, do tell us more then. And I did, and there was a great deal of interest, and warmly encouraged. Business Time in Essex was born on the day of the Brexit vote, funnily enough, so I won't forget that in a hurry. It always lets me know when the starting point in the journey was. I took the decision straight away. If we're going to do this magazine, we're going to do it properly. The business model was challenging, to say the least, namely printing and mailing out in the old-fashioned way in an envelope, 8,000 copies of a magazine, all totally free. The approximate cost of this, now we're at 80 pages, is about £12,000 per issue. So if you say it quickly, it's okay, but if you dwell on it too long, it's a bit concerning. So how, you may well ask, does this make a business model if I'm doing a £12,000 cost issue of a magazine and sending it out for free? Well, quite simply, the magazine is paid for by advertising revenue. The only problem was I was a journalist, not a salesman. So I thought, no problem, I'll find a commissioned salesman, sort that side of it out. Easier said than done, I discovered. I tried a few people and no success whatsoever in terms of selling advertising. So I became that said salesman, plus the editor, plus the publisher, plus the writer. I even have to make my own tea sometimes. So it really is the ultimate sort of one-man band. So as that one-man band publishing machine, off I set to see where the tide would take me. My gamble to concentrate on quality, both in terms of the content and the look of the magazine, paid dividends, and the magazine quickly gained momentum. We launched as what I thought was a very respectable 48 pages, and we've grown and grown, and we're now 80 pages plus. We actually did an 88 pager last year, and very pleased to say we're now the largest business magazine in the UK. So the way it works, without boring you with too much detail, is, I'll be quite candid here, we're 50% advertising and 50% editorial, and we maintain that ratio quite rigidly. So there's lots and lots of content in there. The content is editorial, not advertorial, so it has to be interesting, not puff, blowing your own trumpet stuff. What it does mean is that nearly all the editorial is allocated to people who are advertising. That's how the business model has to work. So if you want some nice editorial in there, great, but you'll have to advertise as well. So a solicitor, for instance, will take out an advert, and then elsewhere in the magazine they'll have a column where they write not about themselves and their firm and how great they are, but about a topical issue relating to the business world. I do get people who say, oh, can you run an interesting article on this? And when I mention maybe they'd like to advertise, there's a sort of, I don't think the magazine's right for us to advertise. So I do sort of candidly ask why they think it's okay for them and it's the right magazine to have an article in, but not to advertise, and that usually stumps them. But so we try and strike a balance. It's a two-way street. You know, I'm trying to provide this vehicle, a B2B magazine for the county in which people can market themselves. But in return, you know, that comes at a cost, and if people realise that and appreciate that, as many do, it works wonderfully well, and people end up with a very nice advert in there and a very nice editorial, and everyone's happy. So that's the fundamentals of how the magazine works. It is a printed magazine, and that's what I'm very proud of in this day and age, but we are online as well as a flip book. We've also introduced an online PR news platform called BusinessTime in Essex, whereby people can submit stories on there. It started off as a subscription model, and one day we'll probably revert back to that. But what we've done during the pandemic as a bit of added value to our advertisers, that anyone who advertises in the magazine has free use of the Business Wire service. So that's our way during difficult times of trying to add a bit of extra value. So what can we draw from this little journey of mine? Well, a few things, I think. Firstly, always listen to other people, but ultimately ignore them and follow your gut instinct, because your gut instinct is normally, I find, pretty good to you, and that's certainly what I did. Secondly, sometimes to stand out from the crowd, you have to step away from the crowd. The world might have seemed at the time very on-screen, digital obsessed, but sometimes it's wise to remember that sometimes people can have too much of the one thing, and what they need is actually something a little bit different to sort of freshen their interest. Thirdly, I suppose from a personal point of view, I guess that one of the lessons is it's never too late to learn a new skill. As I said, at the age of 57 and after a career as a journalist, and you know, salespeople were considered crossing into the dark side, I learned I could sell, driven by necessity. I have to say, I had to sell, otherwise the magazine didn't appear it was going to go anywhere. So I learned to skill and sell. Not certainly by any textbook method, as anyone who's spoken to me about the advertising side will tell you, but by showing passion for what I believed in. I think it was that show of passion which sells the advertising. You know, I haven't been on an advertising sales course, wouldn't want to, but I think if you're passionate about something, it will see you through. And fourthly, and perhaps most importantly, I think one of the lessons is that if you're going to do something, do it properly. I could have cut many corners in producing BusinessTime in Essex, but there's no shortage of mediocrity out there. And I knew, crucially, that I'd be dealing and talking with, you know, some serious, clever, intelligent business people who weren't going to have the wool pulled over their eyes. They'd soon suss out a good publication from a crass publication. So I set my stall out very early on, told it to them straight. The magazine would be quality in everything it did. and that quality comes at a price. You know, we're not able to give pages away for £50. We've got an awful lot of costs to cover, as I alluded to earlier. But in producing a quality magazine, I'm pleased to say many people have appreciated that it does come at a cost, but it's a good value cost and they're prepared to pay it. Which brings us back, I suppose, to the title of this quality, this little presentation. Quality magazines never lose their gloss. We all spend so much of our time now on the screen nowadays of some sort, whether it's a phone or desktop, laptop. So I think a well-produced print magazine, it would appear, is seen as something of a breath of fresh air. It's a chance to put your feet up, perhaps in the evening, make yourself a cuppa, feel the magazine in your hand. If it's fairly new off the press, you can actually smell the print. It's gorgeous. Sit back and read it at your own pace. Yes, as I said, we are online as well. I'm not that much of a dinosaur. Some people would disagree. And we're certainly not resting on our laurels. You know, we've got it to a position where, you know, Essex is sitting there proudly as the biggest regional B2B magazine in the country. But in the autumn, we're introducing a B2C supplement in the middle. So if you are a B2C business, there's still a place in the magazine for you, and you'll still be positioning yourself and targeting that very same high-end readership of business directors and business owners. We're also now offering an online-only option for advertisers. So if your marketing budget is very meagre, and I fully appreciate that a lot of businesses, particularly in the current climate, will have meagre marketing budgets, we do an online-only option, which is considerably cheaper, about 75% cheaper than if you advertise in the printed magazine, for fairly obvious reasons. I don't have a print cost to incur, I don't have a mailing cost to incur, so it's one way of being in the online option and still being part of the magazine. But our USP will always be that we're an oasis of glorious print, I like to think, in an online obsessed world. Is that putting too much gloss on it? I don't think you ever put too much gloss on a nice magazine, certainly when it comes to quality. So, ladies and gents, that's my very much abridged story of a 5-year journey, not into the unknown exactly, but certainly into the jaws of uncertainty. I'm delighted to say that I've not yet been eaten and devoured by the digital monsters. But if anyone would like to know a bit more about the journey and the magazine, I'll be very happy to have a chat with you about it. Probably the easiest thing is to go on our website, which will enable you both to have a look at the magazine and find out more about it. All my contact details are on there. So it's quite simply businesstimeinessex.co.uk. Hope you enjoy the magazine. Hope you've enjoyed this fantastic conference. It's been brilliantly put together. I congratulate everyone who's been part of it. I'm sure it's enormous work. There'll be a huge sigh of relief tonight when it's finally closed. And yeah, thanks very much indeed.